What is good, guys? Welcome back to the Benefit Podcast, bringing you everything you need to know about living your best life. And this podcast comes from, it's actually a really interesting topic. And the reason I'm pulling this one up is because I've probably mentioned it several times before, but I'm pretty active in quite a lot of like Facebook groups, Facebook communities, people who are trying to get themselves in better shape, whether it's build muscle, lose fat, etc., etc. I'm in quite a lot of these pages, and I try and be as helpful as I possibly can in them. And an interesting point came up from someone. Essentially, someone had posted in there with a bit of a, I guess what you'd refer to as a bit of a dilemma. So they found themselves in this situation where they were basically forever losing and regaining the same 30 pounds, never really making much progress, and not regaining and losing the same 30 pounds, but like pushing to be a little bit leaner every time, and that kind of thing. It was basically they're going round in circles. They lose the 30 pounds, but then lose the drive, the motivation for whatever reason. And then they end up gaining it all back again. And then they find themselves back at square one, losing it, gaining it, losing it, gaining it. Perfect scenario, perfect example of someone who's very much in that yo-yo cycle. And you may well be able to relate to that. And that my response to that was that basically they needed more accountability to push them further than they were able to go by themselves. Because what often happens in those scenarios is that people get to a certain point and then something happens, and that could be like, it could be an actual thing. It might be that illness happens, they miss a few workouts, they get sick, they go on holiday, and then that completely derails. So like momentum might have been building for X period of time, they get sick, they go on holiday, they start to miss training, diet goes a bit out the window, and basically that leads them to just completely fall off and go reverting right back to old habits again. The reason I said that what they need is initially more accountability in the first place, because what that accountability is then going to do is it's going to help them to stick to something for long enough that not only do they see the changes happen that they want to see, so they get to that point of losing the 30 pounds, and then they've got someone there to hold them accountable to do the right things to get beyond that point. And whether that's to lose another 20, 30, 50 pounds, whatever the goal is, having that someone there who's going to make sure that you continue to do the things that you need to get to the place you want to go, that accountability absolutely helps. Having that accountability there is also going to mean that you've got much longer to let those habits and stuff bed in, because if like we all know that it takes time to build a habit, it takes time to create a habit, and equally it takes time to break old ones. And even if you're losing that 30, that same 30 pounds, gaining it back again, even if you're doing that in a relatively aggressive manner, I just lost about 30 pounds in 15 weeks getting ready for my photo shoot. So even if you're doing that in a relatively aggressive manner, you're not necessarily allowing long enough for the right kinds of habits to sort of stick. You're not necessarily allowing yourself the right amount of time to really change things. The other thing that you're doing in that moment is you're only really learning how to diet, right? And that might sound like an odd thing to say, but actually you're only, if you lose 30 pounds, and let's say you take it reasonably steadily, let's say you lose 30 pounds over the course of 4, 5, 6 months, takes you a little while, and you start to build the right habits, it's still potentially not long enough, because all you're learning to do in that moment is diet. You're just learning how to remove more food, add more cardio and steps. And even at the point that you might get to the goal that you have, and like, let's say that that's a total of 50, 60, 80 pounds of loss, if all you've been doing for that entire time is dieting, all you've learned how to do is diet. And actually understanding how to maintain things, how to like reverse calories in the right manner to bring them back up to what is going to be your new maintenance, and your new maintenance is going to be different to what your maintenance might have been at the start of that journey, because if there's 30, 50, 80 pounds less of you, your body doesn't need as much energy. And so, you can't just immediately revert back to what you calculated as maintenance when you were 30, 50, 80 pounds heavier, because your body's in a different environment. You can't just suddenly, for most people, start adding back, 500, 1,000, 1,500 calories, depending on how hard you've had to push, because most people are going to get really lost in that. So actually learning and understanding how to maintain, how to reverse, how to come out of that phase of dieting, so that you actually learn more than just how to diet. Because, like I say, if all you've ever learned how to do is diet, you are going to find yourself in that cycle of dieting, but then having no idea what to do after that. So everything spirals and it starts to go out of control. And then bang, you go back to dieting again, because that's all you know. And so that, again, is one of the reasons that people can find them in this perpetual loop of just, weight goes up, weight comes down, weight goes up, weight goes down, because they've only ever learned how to diet. So having someone there to also, be part of that process of not only getting you to the goal, but showing you what you then need to do in order to maintain, or, if you've got particularly lean and then you've got goals to add muscle, like how to reverse that, how to go into a lean gains phase, like all of those things are really, really important. The other thing that the accountability is gonna give you is actually where I believe coaching plays its biggest role. And I know what a lot of people will say, that they will begin coaching, they'll think about coaching, they'll get involved in coaching when they've got, a clear 3 months, 6 months, whatever it might be, to commit to it fully. When does life ever give you a clear 3 months, 6 months? When does life ever give you a clear 3 weeks, let alone 3 months? Something is always going to crop up. And in my opinion, the real side of coaching is actually helping you to navigate that, because what you've probably done in the past is you might have been able to stick to something for 3, 4, 5 weeks because life was reasonably steady and stable. Then something happens and it all falls apart. Coaching comes in to help you navigate the unexpected, to help you get over those hurdles, to help you, get through the tough times and actually learn how to manage those properly, because they are going to happen again. And if you're never learning the skill around how to manage them, you're going to forever find yourself in this cycle of doing so much, but only in the periods where life is perfect, quote unquote. But when life gets difficult, which it inevitably will, if you are just continually just falling off that wagon time and time and time again, you're just never ever going to get anywhere. So, I think for me, one of the big things when I said to that person about, like the accountability side of things, it's multifaceted, right? Like it's the accountability to get you where you need to be in the first place, or where you want to be in the first place, because you will make excuses for yourself, you will let yourself off. It's having that coach there to help navigate those times where things aren't simple and straightforward, because it's sort of easy to navigate life when it is simple and straightforward. Most people's lives aren't like that. If you've got kids, if you've got a demanding job, if you've got relatives who have stuff going on, like no one ever knows when the car might break down, or whatever the situation that might crop up is, something is going to happen. And if you're not equipped with the right tools and you've not been given the right support to understand how to get through those, all of that progress that you've made is just going to keep falling out the window. And every time you do that, you make it harder for yourself as well, because losing and regaining the same amount of weight, your body just doesn't really want to do that. So those things become a big factor. And then the final one to really, really not like poo-poo, to really not overlook, is the fact that even when you reach that goal, having someone there to help you navigate the post-diet period, which I've spoken about in depth in other podcasts, in various YouTube videos, having someone there to help navigate that post-diet period is so, so, so important. Whether that's to maintain what you've achieved, whether that's to, go in a different direction or work towards a new goal, there is a difference in how that approach is going to happen. And you need to be able to do that the right way, because you can't just revert back to those old habits and expect yourself to stay stay in shape, get in better shape, because it was the old habits that got you out of shape in the first place. So all of those things make that support, that accountability, such an important factor. And having someone there who's also going to navigate things the right way, who's going to give you the expert guidance, who's going to make sure that calorie changes are made in the right ways, make sure that training's all programmed, cardio steps, all of these things are absolutely put in the right place for you as an individual. That's also going to make your life much easier, because you're not guessing, you're not trying to navigate this alone, you're not trying to take advice from 100 different people who have given their opinion on the internet. It's one route, it's one way, and it's all put clearly laid out for you in a manner that you understand. So I hope that makes sense. If anyone's got any questions on that, like particularly with regard to maybe you found yourself in a similar situation, like you are one of those yo-yo dieters who is able to lose X amount, but relatively quickly it all goes back on again, give me a shout, let me know, because there may also be like mindset issues around that. And that's something I'm going to touch on in next week's podcast, in terms of what the experience I've had with people where it's not even so much like a physical blocker that stops them moving forwards, it's actually a mental block. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that one coming next week, where I'll talk through those things, because it's a really, really interesting topic. But anyone who has any questions or just wants to reach out, get in touch, ben@benhowardfitness.com is the email address. You can find me on all the socials @benhowardfitness. Like this, review it, share it far and wide. And, I look forward to hearing from every single person very, very soon.